Hello and welcome back to another Rhize demo video. In this video, I'm going to be giving you an example of receiving a payload via MQTT and calling a BPMN process that will transform the message and then update the knowledge graph. So I'm going to start by mapping out my BPMN. What I want for this is going to be a message start event or start task. So I'll select that here. And then on the right-hand side in the property, I'm actually going to set a message reference that is the MQTT topic that I want to listen to. In this example, we're going to be looking at Acme Inc. Charlotte orders released. I'm now going to take the message and I'm going to perform a simple JSONata transform. And then I'm going to add the job order to the graph. The transform message is the JSONata transform. I'm actually going to change my input JSON, and now let's dive a little deeper as I explain some of the core parameters into our JSONata transform. Okay, so on the JSONata transform service task, there are two inputs. There is the input JSON and JSONata transform expression. What this task does is it takes the input JSON document and then applies the JSONata transform to it. And then the resulting outcome is put into the response variable. The input JSON can come from the process variable context, which can be done by simply using an equals $sign, which you can see above the transform expression. So within the transform expression, I can map out a payload to add job order input. So as you can see here, I'm mapping the orders that come in and giving them an ID, a work type, and then I'm going to set material requirements. And the material requirements that I'm putting in here is from a pre-existing BOM message. So bear with me as I go through this. So as the transform expression finishes up here, I'm going to increase my max payload size, which is in bytes, and then I'm going to change the response variable or the output, and I'm just going to call it input now. Okay, and moving on now, I'm going to edit the add job orders task for this one. So I'm going to select the GraphQL mutation, and we're going to add job orders. The input is going to be add job order input, and I'm going to return the ID, the work type, and the material requirements, as well as material definition version. And so now looking into the variables, I'm going to change it to be my input. And when I get a message now, the transform is going to change something to receive it. So it's going to transform the message, and we're going to update the graph now with the add job order input. Okay, great. So now this can be improved upon. So I'm actually going to publish back out to MQTT as a bit of feedback to let me know that the job orders have been added. The intermediate message just needs a body. And I'm also going to update the receive message and add some labels to my tasks. Then I'm going to give my process a name and then ID. I'm going to save it and set the version state to active once I do this. So I saved the version, and one thing to note now, when the version is active, it's not immediately subscribing to the start event. I need to come to the process list here and enable it. Once it's enabled, the BPMN engine will then subscribe and start processing once MQTT message is received. So here on an example MQTT client, I'm actually going to publish a message into Acme Inc. Charlotte orders. I'm also going to subscribe to Acme Inc. Charlotte debug so I can get that debug message back. And I'll confirm that. I've then got a fake order example here. It's an example payload coming from an ERP just to demonstrate this functionality. So it's an order with a BOM with a number of items. And I'm just going to go ahead and publish this in. As you can see, I then get the add job orders response back. So what's happened is it's received a message, transformed out of the job orders, and sent me the message back. This can actually be improved upon. So let's add some validation to make sure that the incoming payload matches what we expect. So again, I'm going to add an intermediate message debug that'll let me know why it wasn't valid and display the validation error. So next, we're going to add another service task template, and this one will be a JSON schema validation service node. So we can give it a schema, and I've got one prepared, which I'll paste in just a second. But I'm going to update the condition to check if the JSON schema is valid. So I updated the condition to valid. I'm then going to go over to my debug node and change the input body. I'm going to update the debug message just to be the words result success. And then result failure once the schema is not valid. Okay, so looking into the JSON schema that I talked about earlier, I have one I'm going to paste in here. So here's my JSON schema with incoming orders. It has an order array. An order array contains an ID and BOM, and the BOM is an array of BOM items. BOM items are simply an ID, material description, type, quantity, and unit of measure. And as you can see at the bottom, under required, the ID, material, type, quantity, and unit of measure are required. So I'm going to paste that into the schema. Since I haven't entered a variable, it will validate the entire variable context. I'm now going to save this and set the version as active. And then I'm going to move into my process list and enable it. And just to note, every time you change the version on a BPMN that has a message start task, you need to re-enable the message start. Now moving into the client, I'm actually going to add a new order here, PO 100013, and check OK. And as you can see, the results success message here. Now, if I change my JSON schema so that it doesn't match, it will fail validation. So I'm going to add a 2 here and 2 here, and then PO 100014. So as you can see, I am getting the JSON schema validation error. So it is invalidated and checked that it's got missing properties of BOM. And finally, I'm going to move over to the audit log and I'm going to query my graph and check to make sure that the order exists and just to make sure it is updating the graph appropriately. So after I go through a couple lines here, I'll press play and we'll be able to query it and see that PO 10012 or 13 with my material requirements is working. So I hope you enjoyed this example of receiving a message via MQTT, calling a BPMN, and within that BPMN, validating the schema that matches our expected payload format. When airing out and giving messages, we'll also say why when it doesn't match, and otherwise transforming the message and then updating the graph. Thank you.